My name is Hedi BenAicha. I am originally from Tunisia, born, raised in France, and educated in France as well. By academic training, I am really a historian of Islam, if you like. I studied with Claude Cahen in Paris, one of the preeminent economic historians of the Middle East, the late Claude Cahen. So this is my academic background. I have a grounding in Islamic history that allows me a little bit to understand what's going on. But I don't pretend that I have solutions. I'm a historian. I am always, even at my job, I always contextualize stuff. That's how I am I'm trained. So normally I will not talk about political science, because political scientists they tend to present stuff that the solution is right there, and then in a few years democracy is going to take place and mayhem will go away. Normally I don't venture that way. Normally I look at history, but this time probably I will mix both. How many of you know where Tunisia is first? North Africa, good. Tunisia is in North Africa, the upper geographical setting of Africa itself. Actually, the name of Africa comes from Tunisia, because Tunisia used to be Africa by Rome. So, Ifriqiya in Arabic, and from Rome is Africa. Saint Augustine is from Africa, as from the Christian tradition. It has seen many civilizations and many rulers, from the Vandals to Byzantium to Rome to the Arabs to the Turks to the French to the Spaniards. So there is that amalgamation of things that is right there, and the rich history that prepares it to be a little bit. That's why I'm heading toward that thesis that it is a little bit different. My talk is about Arab Spring, democracy and religiosity, and is Tunisia an exception? For that reason, I'm giving you a background. The context, the historical context of Tunisian history is, I'm not going to go back further, but let's start with the question of modernity. You understand that Enlightenment, modernity later on, what happened in Europe historically, and how rationalism took place and slowly phased out religiosity, if you like, from real laws maintaining the society. Tunisia had the chance, if you like, and the opportunity to espouse modernity as reflected in Europe. In 1750, Tunisia had a ruler who is part of the Ottoman Empire. You have to understand, Tunisia was part of the Ottoman Empire. It was a regency of the Ottoman Empire, starting in 1650, late 1600. But in 1750, the Bey, or the king of Tunisia, and the bourgeoisie, if you like, Tunisoise, of Tunis capital, and the educational system itself, looked north, that is, Europe, through ambassadorship, through exchange with Genoa, the Republic of Genoa, with Italy, with Sicily, with what have you. That trade, that back and forth, gave the opportunity to Tunisians to say, well, we will do the same. We will rejuvenate the educational system. We will rejuvenate the health system. We will also rejuvenate the political system itself that is binding among the society, the citizens, which is really le contrat social, the social contract. how can we, Tunisians, create a modern state that will be part of the international society of that time, the norm. This is before even the French Revolution. So these relationships culminated in up to, because what happened is they created a college of war, the war college, which is to create or to train and to prepare officers and what have you in terms of mirroring European way of armed forces. They built new hospitals. They created modern setting for institutional education that was specifically religious, because religion was the main, which is the mosque and all its branches. So there was a modern way of recasting Tunisian society. What happened? It happened that state, the monarchy, which is really not Tunisian born, they are Turkish origin, but not Turkish either. They are Janissaries, what we call them. They are from all over the place, from the Mediterranean. The Ahmed Bey that I am talking about of 1750, who created the modern way of the new Tunisian civil society, is actually Sicilian origin, that was taken by the Turks, became Janissary, raised as an Ottoman, spoke Ottoman, Turkish at that time, and became a leader of the army, of the Ottoman army, that also came to the rescue of Tunisia when it was attacked by the Spaniards in the 1600s. So, Ahmed Bey was not really part of the Tunisian Berber society that was mixed, grafted on, but Islamically accepted because Muslim, and that's it. That's the identity. But this Ahmed Bey, which you can pick up the book by Carl Brown from Princeton University called Ahmed Bey and Modern Tunisia. Excellent. It is really classic. That modern way of approaching the society and re-engineering Tunisian society itself, sooner or later brought in better understanding of what the state is about. Tribalism became minimal. Territorial integrity became clear. The Tunisians of that time knew their frontiers. On the east is the Mediterranean, southeast is Libya, and the west is Algeria, and then the Sahara in the south. Garrison from the Beylical or the king army existed everywhere. Frontiers, fortresses. So there was a state. What I'm talking about this historical background is to give you a context that later on I'm going to bring more ideas into this to let you know that what happened in Tunisia in January 2011 is not in a vacuum. It's not because the new generation, they're using Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth, they are sick and tired and walk to the streets. No, it is an accumulation of historical events and historical setting and consciousness. People became aware. So that educational system created what we call Tunisianity, because by 1750 and on, the Tunisianity, which is what we talk today about political identity, nationalism, and nations building, already existed and became fortified and became stronger, to the point that in 1830, when the French entered Algeria and occupied it, Tunisia had a full-fledged state. They had an army, they have administration, they have they have tax collector, they have ministries, they have educational system, different, okay, fine, but a little bit modern, but different from European, but still at the image of Europe. So there was an elite when French army entered in 1830 Algeria. Tunisia had its elite. Elite of what? Not elite only financial, but elite intellectual. I'll give you an example. One of the foremost thinker from the Zaytuna Mosque, his name is Tahir Haddad, wrote a book called, at the time of the colonization, called Our Women in Sharia and Society. His main topic was the liberation of women liberation. He wrote another one actually, the workers of Tunisia. So in reality, if you look at the Tunisian civil society today, and specifically the labor union, the labor union existed before the French, created by religious people. For that reason I said democracy and religiosity. And religious people who were actually shunned away by the reactionary thinkers of the religions itself. So what we look at a modernity that is espoused, interpreted by indigenous intellectuals. Can you believe that a sheikh from the mosque create a union for the workers? And not only that, talks about Marx and Engels, talks about the labor movement in Europe, talks about the exploitation, talks about the poor, talks about all that theses of Marxist theses. And he is a sheikh. And talking also about women, the liberation of women, to the point that he was put under house arrest, stoned, his house, and then forbidden from exercising his profession as a lawyer. So to see that, why I'm talking about this, because when you see ISIS and all these, is not also born today. They exist. The thought of fundamentalist thought, the reactionary thought, exists ingrained in the society itself because of the interpretation of religion. Now go back a little bit, in the 1800s. In 1848, the state of Tunisia abolished slavery, and truly abolished slavery. Before which country?
The United States.
Little tiny. Has a decree in 1848, no more slavery. In 1862, they decided to have what? A constitution, constitutional monarchy. Yes, in 1862. One, the only one, I'm talking about exceptionalism, the only one in that neighborhood, stretching from the Euphrates to the Atlantic, with the same baggage of culture, religion, and so on and so forth. That's the only little country that decided to have its own constitution. So what did they have then? They have women union before the French came in. They have abolished slavery before the French came in. And they had a constitution before the French came in. Why am I saying this? Simply to say that modernity, it is not a product of colonialism or colonial encounter. The colonial encounter actually accentuated it. The colonial encounter actually made it even clearer that modernity has to be espoused, has to be interpreted, has to be given, and becomes a flavorable thing from the indigenous setting. In 1860, because of that, all these milestones in Tunisian history, that the resistance to the French occupier, later on in 1881 anyway, was different from any other encounter The elite, Tunisian elite, including the Beylical court, sought in the French because they knew that it is a mistake, of course, bad management, bad political and financial choices that the Tunisian government at that time has taken, which is really, this is the shortcoming, if you like, of espousing modernity, because the more they visited Paris, the more they wanted to have Tunis resembles to Paris in terms of Versailles. The Beylical court looked at the superficial side sometimes of modern life and borrowed a lot from private banks in Europe, and the three powers at that time, France, England, and Italy, decided to have an international commission, financial international commission, to start restructuring the financial life of Tunisia. And that's how the colonial penetration started. They couldn't get it before. They were next door in 1830 when they marched through Algiers without any resistance, because Algiers, comparatively to Tunisia, did not have the structure of a state, did not have that understanding of national identity, did not have all the bells and whistles of a modern state to stand to this invasion. From 1830 to 1881. So that's what, half a century? It took half a century for the French to find an alibi to get to the Tunisian territory. Fine. The Tunisian encounter, again, in this case, about the resistance, when the Beylical court has to sign an understanding that its financial affairs have to be in order, and to be in order, therefore, you need an international commission, which is the beginning of encroachment of Western powers. It went well, actually. The elite said, yes, sure, let's open the door and let's share. Let's share. You have things that we don't have. We would like to know how you handle modern life. How can we strengthen our state? So they saw in the French and the Italian and the English at that time, they saw in them an example to emulate, and something that probably to cooperate. They never thought that it is going to be something else. So their encounter was a peaceful encounter. Okay, we share. You want us to share? There's no problem, as long as we know that it will be different. Actually, the French themselves, in many of the literature, the colonial literature that I have read, they were astonished at the reaction of the Tunisians. Normally, they should be the fundamentalist Islam, the banner of Islam, and all that stuff. No, they said, fine, doesn't matter. We have Jews, we have Christians, we have Maltese, we have everybody. I mean, it was a multicultural society. So the Tunisians are not kind of stranger to somebody from Europe. They send their kids sometimes there, the elite, if you like. So that the French were truly astonished. How come? I mean, there is no, as if they wanted to create a mayhem for reason to commit more issue, more or kind of implement more force to subjugate the society. But anyway, the foreign encroachment accentuated, escalated, and at the end became a protectorate. Of course, they cannot erase the state. They couldn't. The Tunisians have an idea of who is the head of that state. The French could not do it as they did in Algiers. In Algiers, they make it tabula rasa. The day doesn't exist. A new setting of the actually became a governorate. Not only that, they had representative in the French parliament, the citizens of Algeria. not the indigenous I'm talking about the French ones. In Tunis, they couldn't do that. Their solution in 1881 is to sign a pact of what we call protectorate. The Pact of Bardo and La Marsa, which is two cities where the king at that time had the palaces. That they still exist. The Bardo became the parliament. So, 1881 is the crucial date whereby modernity even took a higher speed. The French were able to build more schools, were able to embed modern science, modern engineering, modern medicine, what have you, in the curriculum. The Tunisian accepted it. You find in many schools what we call Franco-Arab school, means the principal of the school or the head of the high school is French, and the teachers are either French or Tunisian French educated. They have the Arab language as part of the curriculum, but mostly all French. That window became a big, huge opening to more educated people. And this is going to be the conundrum. Educated people, they're more intelligent, they know how to interpret stuff, they want to long for something else, they see the shortcoming, they have adopted philosophical thought, critical thinking, they are reading all possible ideas from an international human point of view. So, even though they were opened and exposed to modern way of thinking, the Tunisian colonial encounter accelerated that modern way of life and modern thinking. To the point that more civil societies, human rights organizations under the French, and these organizations included the French who are in Tunisia and the Tunisian who are indigenous, as well as other communities like the Italians, Maltese, the Sicilian, many others. So there is that really cross-breeding of ideas. To the point that the Sheikh of Zaytuna itself became the leader. Of course, some of them still harbor that backward, if you like, or still hanging on what we call tradition, which is, by definition, is always in flux. But many of the well-established sheikhs started interpreting the Quran itself differently, starting to impose ways of critical thinking. So the accumulation of that brought in an elite that was able to understand the French, the real interlocutor with the French. They understood how to negotiate their way of independence. Actually, the Tunisians said, we don't need independence now. We need what we call internal autonomy. First, the first step. And we need more collaboration with the French. Then next step will be a total independence. The independence came in 1956. The elite who led the independence pushed that modern way of thinking even further. They instituted the first in the Arab world and Muslim world that no more divorce done according to the Quranic law. There is no more Quranic Sharia court. It became a secular court. So it is truly the first secular state in the Middle East, whereby the constitution is binding everybody. It is modern constitution. The right of women is first, family planning, education, and health. No army whatsoever. The movement of 2010 that brought what we call the Arab Spring, but it is really the Tunisian Spring, because when you look around it, it became like a winter, a frozen winter everywhere, killing everywhere. But the Tunisian 2010, it is really an accumulation of good stuff that happened from 1750 to that point. Because when you look at it, even in modern history after independence, civil society played a big role. As I mentioned, the women specifically played the biggest role in 2010. In 2010, actually, when you look at all the streets of Tunis capital or anywhere in that country, mostly women, not men. There are men, that women are majority. Women were able, because of the educational system, because of the family planning, because they have the right. No more the man cannot go in and say, I'm divorce you. No, it is no longer that second-rate citizen. 2011 was an accumulation of a struggle of the ones who did not have access and have all the ideas and thought and aspiration to be more within the what you call participatory democracy, because unfortunately, again, I was talking to my friend here before, that the independence came in with a very enlightened elite, but the elite again fell into the same issues of totalitarian Arab thinking rather than a democratic way. So that generation that has been educated, including women specifically, led the path into truly breaking completely the wall of silence. And they said, we have nothing to lose in this case. Since I want more participation, I am going to fight for it. And thanks to the technology, of course. The technological setting that in my generation never had the opportunity to communicate with someone from somewhere in the nation. Now, because of the internet, because of the tweeting, because of Facebook, because of also the state of mind that is really willing and has been preparing and being part of all the challenges that went through during the independence, that today they have done it. So one last thing is that Iban, the Israeli, said the Arabs never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. I hope this time we are not going to miss that opportunity. They are not going to miss the opportunity. By the way, lately they had an election, 3 years of fundamentalist rule. Doesn't matter. They were ousted. And a real election happened, and a secular elite took over. They have the most advanced constitutions, and there is a little bit of flicker of hope in that part of the world. So there is no ISIS. Hopefully they are trying to knock at the door anyway, because the germs of ISIS exist in the culture itself. So thank you very much for listening.
So I have a question.
Please.
First of all, you started out letting us know that you're a historian.
Yes.
And you said you're not a political scientist.
No, but
So
I fell into it.
So I'm a political scientist. So
Well, we feed each other.
right. Actually, I had to study historiography, actually, methodology for causality with what happens in history and political regimes. So let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So first of all, you mentioned that Tunisia, over its history, it shaped itself into its own form of civil society. And do you feel that because of the Arab Spring, what had happened, that people were really misreading what happened in Tunisia, thinking it was an overnight change or regime change because of the incident, the young man, and the social media and so forth? Or do you feel that this was something that was in the works anyway?
Yes, it is in the works anyway. I just really mentioned briefly why 2010, December 2010 happened. 17th of December 2010, the self-immolation of the young man because he was fed up. But from 1956 to 2010, in 1963, there was a big, huge movement against the new regime. The new regime, the intellectual felt that the elite is moving right-wing, trying to stifle all freedom and what have you. So the regime at that time did exactly what happened in the Arab War. Decapitate the people and send others to exile. When you do that, you already planted the germ of resistance and change. So in 1963, all what we call at that time, they called them, but now today we understand they were not, Arab nationalist, Ba'athist, and Marxist, and liberal, and so on and so forth. They were marginalized by the new liberal, the new elite, indigenous elite of the government. 1963, 1972, I was a young man, and I was part, actually, of the student riot because we were having our Congress, National Congress of Students, and it was democratically moving forward to elect members of whatever, and all of a sudden the government sent his own militia, not militia, but party members to break it up and put people in jail like that, simply because they didn't like this. What? How dare you speak democracy? How dare you elect? We have one party, one big leader Bourguiba, and that's about it. That's 1972. 1972, the student riot brought in the labor union, which is, again, the oldest labor union in the Arab world, 1920. So the labor union and the student union, hand in hand, did exactly almost like 1968 in Paris. Almost toppled the regime. Almost. It did. 1978, another riot across the territory because of the disparity that the people witnessed. As I told you, you educate people, you are in bad trouble. You educate means there is critical thinking. And unfortunately, Bourguiba, even though he was a enlightened dictator, didn't understand that when you educate, when people read Descartes, like any Frenchman or any Frenchwoman, or read Kant or whoever, they gain critical thinking. Therefore, they would say, what is this? I'm not living the correct way. So 1978, big riot, what we call the bread riot.
So it has a history of
rioting.
Of rioting.
Exactly. 1982, the same thing. Then 1987, the Prime Minister of Bourguiba took over by a white coup, which is BenAicha, the one who was ousted in 2010.
I guess the point I would like to make is that you mentioned that, the notion of civil society.
Yeah.
I think really each country has to decide and develop over time, over history,
Absolutely.
its own civil society.
Absolutely.
What that means, whether it's secular, whether it's related to religion, or a combination.
I agree.
Without the structure of civil society, without opportunities for the people, within the terms that those people have developed. And you said that the women had a lot to do with what happened in Tunisia as far as civil society is concerned.
Absolutely. And
I don't know if anyone else has any questions for.
Yes.
By the way, my name is Hedi. I'm from Johns Hopkins University.
University. Okay. Thank you.
You said that Tunisia's modernity is not product of colonialism.
It's not only.
Yeah. Okay. So can we say that it's partly the product of Ataturk and its reforms, because it has some effects on the countries of the region, as you know that. Can we say that they were inspired from his reforms?
I guess you are Turkish.
Yeah.
You are cousin, but remote. Ataturk, of course, Ataturk, who abolished the caliphate, if you like, Abdul Hamid Thani, he's actually product of the Tanzimat themselves in your country. He didn't bring modernity. Tanzimat started before Ataturk. Ataturk is the product of Tanzimat. And that's what modernity is about. When the BenAicha, the high poet, decided to say, oh my goodness, I lost in Crimea. How can I lose in Crimea? I have the best army in Europe, and yet I lose in Crimea. Well, because I am not having a modern army. And Ataturk is the product of that modern army that the Caliphate created in Tanzimat. So, for that reason, I am saying that modernity started from within, because we don't like it. Because globalization that we talk about today, globalization has been always the fact. People move. And when people move, bring ideas. And when they bring ideas, they want to do it. So, to your point, yes and no. Yes, Kemal Atatürk, of course, but no, because Kemal Atatürk himself is product of the Tanzimat. If it were not for the Tanzimat, Kemal Atatürk wouldn't have been able to do anything. Because Tanzimat brings new way of thinking, new structure of the army, which allowed them to see even further and push that modernity a little bit further. So it is not in the vacuum. It means Kemal Atatürk is not coming from somewhere, nowhere else. He's not born from nothing. Yeah, Bourguiba the same thing in Tunisia, who is probably, everybody else will say, well, he's not that far away from Kemal Atatürk. But Bourguiba at least did not change the language of the country. He kept the same language. See? Added the French, but it doesn't mean that Arabic is gone. So for that reason, generation after generation after generation has that continuum of historical thinking. Right? So the modernity of Turkey sometimes is questionable because to a certain point there was a generation. Then after that, this generation today doesn't know before because you cannot read Ottoman Turkish.
But in many ways, history works that way. Someone something may develop. Someone may come in.
You're right.
Coattails of someone else. There
Right.
may be some great event like in Crimea, the army led by Ataturk and so forth. But then, where he took it in a different direction as far as
Absolutely.
Turkey's concerned.
Because he said this is the only solution. Because
Caliphate goes away.
exactly. No, Bourguiba did the
He
same
made those
thing.
decisions.
No, but Bourguiba did the same thing.
Mhm.
I'm just mentioning to her that Bourguiba did the same thing in a different way. Because the setting of Tunisia is different from Turkey.
It's true.
Turkey is the seat of power, Tunisia was not. See? And also because the setting of Tunisia differs from Turkey. Turkey could be an identity by itself, because that's Turkish.
And I think that really speaks to your point that each country, each civil society
Absolutely.
has its own path to follow.
Yeah.
Based on the history, based on the people
Yes.
and the decisions of the people and the structure. Are they structured or are they not structured? Or if they are structured, there may be regime change. You know, something like that happened in the United States too. But
Of course,
in,
of course.
In France,
Of course.
in the
France.
Western world, but then, of course, the mistake in thinking is that what
Thank
happened in
you.
the Western world should be, or can be duplicated.
Exactly.
in the
For that
East.
reason, I would like to say revolution is never in one act. There are many acts. Today, in Tunisia, this is the first act, and more to follow. The same thing in the other countries as just mentioned. Each country has its own way of interpreting stuff. So, revolution is not one act. It took the French to build a modern state, a century or more, from 1789 to the 1900. So imagine that.
So are there
It's
any other
huge.
questions? I don't wanna-
Okay, thank you.
Any other
My name is Abir. I'm a Libyan student. I'm a doctoral candidate at Shaban State University, language literacy and technology program. Here today I'm going to share with you an idea about the role of social media in the Arab Spring, Libyan's fall. Actually, it's a paper I'm working with my advisor and Dr. Richard Lamb on it. Hopefully you'd like it. 4 years ago, in 2011, the whole world watched events that took place in North Africa with mixed feeling of fascination, inspiration, and awe. The bravery, boldness, and courage of its youth, who believed in themselves, believed in their cause, so they powered it and died for it. That year, 2011, according to the Time magazine, called the Year of Protester. It started with Mohammed Bouazizi, a Tunisian who set himself in place, protesting police corruption, which later considered to be the torch that lit most of the Arab revolution, starting from Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, Bahrain, Yemen, Syria, and also its flames reached Southern Europe, some states in Africa, and reached here to the United States of America, Wisconsin. The question is, what mediated such an impact in order to make the idea of revolution to easily spread from one country to another? Simply, it's social media. We'll come to that later. As our focus is Libya, let me reveal to you that this is not the first time when media plays a role in getting the Libyans' attention about certain issues. In late 18th century, early 19th century, Libyans were illiterate, but not ill. Males learned farming and other small trades from their fathers, while females' learning was limited to sewing, cooking, and some other housekeeping stuff. However, lucky males were obliged to learn reading, writing, and mathematics by Sheikh al-Kutab after they finished their prayer. Later, and after some Libyan students studied at Azhar and Zaytuna mosques, which are one of the first and very famous universities in the Islamic history, a national Arab journal corporation started to take place with some Egyptian journals, such as Al-Ahram, Al-Waqa'a al-Masriya, and Al-Awwal al-Masri, which in turn established the beginning of Libyan journalism. One of the very famous and influential journals named Al-Mirsad. This journal was distinguished with its language content simplicity, its closeness to Libyan's daily issues, and its continuous reference to Bank of Rome and its dubious transaction. Its journalists were very daring and aware of their national role. It happens once they published a very controversial article. Its name is Libya an Ottoman state or an Italian colonia? According to Tarhuni 2012, yes, he said, this article in particular raised the tribesmen's attention about the real intention of making Libya a modern state is to make it an Italian territory. For those who are willing to know, what's Bank of Rome? Bank of Rome was a shared investment between the Vatican and the Italian government. It started with a budget of 5 million Italian lira. The bank first started to penetrate the economy of the country by opening branches in most of major cities and towns, then invested in real estate. So they bought around 400,000 acres of cultivated and herding lands. Then they loaned money to Libyans at a very low interest rate, 9% compared to the 20-60%, which were loaned or charged by Jewish moneylenders. And then also they sponsored olive oil, they took control over Sahara trades and maritime transportation between Egypt, Libya, and Italy. So all of these were included in that article, which later caused the closure of this journalism. During the period of colonialism, the journalist pens contributed in the struggle toward independence. This is what Tarhuni said. Later, after the liberation from the Italian and the English colonialism, Gaddafi extended his absolute control over not only the journalism, but all other types of media. So suppression was used to restrict freedom of expression. Political restriction of written press and media continued until the Arab Spring Revolution, when a range or a raft of media and private channels started to spring up in Libya. But the question, is it really an Arab Spring? Not talking about Egypt, not talking about Tunisia, but I'm talking about Libya. Is it really? Let's see. So, most of the reports and research studies put more emphasis on the use of social media as an innovation. For example, if e-democracy could be established or not through it. However, there is little research, if there is any, that looked at the historical role of media in general, and of course I'm talking about Libya in particular, and how the people themselves perceive the role of social media. So we have two research questions. The first one, did Facebook play a role in the Libyan revolution? The second one, how do the Libyans perceive the role of media, in particular as an information outlet? So we spread an online survey of 16 questions among community Facebookers, Libyan Facebookers, in January 2015, with a primary focus on how they perceive the role of social media, and in particular Facebook. The preliminary findings showed that most of the participants considered Facebook, in particular, as a key source to up-to-date news and information. It's even possible to conclude that the use of Facebook for news and updates started to supersede the traditional media. So with that said, people remain skeptical about both sources, media, traditional media, and Facebook for getting the information. Here's this graph shows the number of hours males and females spent Facebooking after the revolution and before it. Come on. Yeah. So this graph shows some of the responses, the participants' responses. For example, question number 8. Yeah. Can show.
Maybe
here.
pointer to the computer, not to the.
Yeah.
I can't.
Just press.
Okay. Question number 8 asks them if they think TV news or traditional media by itself would be helpful in getting the revolution. The majority answered no. So if they only depended on traditional media for getting their cause to the world, it will not be successful. Question number 13, for example, which asks the participants if Facebook contributed in the instability of the country, the majority answered yes. It caused the instability of the country. Number 14, yes is the orange one and no is the green one. It asks the participants if Facebook is the easier and quickest tool for transferring false news about the country and its main leaders. Again, the majority answered yes. However, when it comes to banning Facebook, the majority said no. Or there's an equal between those who say yes and those who say no. And even those who said no, they commented, we are afraid if Facebook was banned, this will give a good chance to some state and private channels to brainwash the audience and pass what works for its own agenda. Many of them did, and as an example, in Naba, which is supported by Islamists and by Qatar. Number 16, which is the more interesting one. As a Libyan citizen, do you agree in describing the uprising by the term Arab Spring? The majority said no, except one. And I really want to know who that one who sees that we achieved our goals. So one of them said, it's the black foe. Another, it's the bloody foe. Many of them, it's the old foe. So none of them, except one. So These responses helped us to contextualize the responses to question 9, which asks us if they think the Libyans have reached their goal from the 17th of February revolution. The majority of respondents believe none of their goals were achieved. However, for those who said yes, the majority referred to the achievement of freedom of speech. So some explained we were close to achieve our goal, but the Islamists stole it, unfortunately. So disclaimer, this is what I got from some of the commenters and the reflection from my participants. And from the street, as I'm from the eastern side of Libya, yeah. From here I could conclude, taking the Libyans' case, that there never was an Arab Spring. This will take me to what is the majority of grassroots, and I myself think at the time when we were supporting our cause, for getting a real democratic country, for having our own social justice, for making our country a real prosper country, there was a kind of Anglo-American alignment with the Islamists. And they view on these uprising an opportunity for begin the implementation of this project. Unfortunately, Libya is completely different from Tunisia and from Egypt. When our regime collapsed, all the security institutions, the army collapsed. So this is why the country is completely unstable right now. There is also some idea from the Academy of Change, Rand Corporation, the International Crisis, and the House of Freedom, which they started some research study about the containment of Islamists, not excluding them. So this may be one reason that put this project, the Anglo-American project, in the scene. It's never been the Libyan Spring. It could be the Tunisian, it could be the Egyptian, but it's never been the Libyans. Simply because spring and springtime refers to the start of better times. It means the efflorescence, the rejuvenation, the rebirth of new times. But what Libya is really witnessing since 40 years is the fall of its civilization, the fall of its youth, just the same way as the shedding of leaves from trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Abir. Are there any questions? Yes.
I would like to ask, how big was your research sample?
There was 57 participants. We excluded 2 of them because they didn't answer most of the questions. So mainly 55.
Do you think it's a representative sample?
Actually, this is a very simple research study, mostly statistical, descriptive. But later in the paper, we are planning to do a more inferential statistics. So I think it could be generalized.
I see. And the group was random, or was it?
Yes, random. We just spread it among Libyan community Facebookers.
I see. So it was not like friends or friends of friends?
No. Just in many pages. Please share. So those who participated, they were 57.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Abir, in many cases, a preliminary study provides some idea what a hypothesis could be, and so I guess that's what you're saying, you're going to be expanding your research on this?
Actually, this is what I'm hoping, because I'm very much interested in the Libyan's history, and by chance, I got a book about how to make a Libyan modern state by Hedi and this really, encouraged me to write about it until we reach in detail the social media and the uprising. So this is what we are doing. We're trying to do it a good paper for publication.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, Shaban, I'd like to thank you very much. You've been a brave lady talking about, Libyan society, and
Thank you, appreciate.
This is something which is. My question is same as the lady question about the questionnaire, because you've done your questionnaire through the Facebook, yes?
Yes.
You want to know where I live in Guantanamo or in Libya or by Facebook, and you want to know who actually participating on the Facebook. This is something you may say that you're feeling by asking questioning people, by asking friends, by seeing this and this and this. But doing a judgment on a country on not spring or a spring by questioning or through the Facebook, we may all answering here through the Facebook, we're telling you that we are in trouble. Because this is something which is really, always, I mean, I'm questioning your method of having the Facebook questionnaire, This is the problem. The other thing is you are a young lady and you're coming from Tripoli, yes?
No, from Benghazi.
Benghazi, you are loving this town.
Thank you.
And this is where most extremists they say is, and you're still here, a lady talking in the most civilized, very good, and nobody touched you. If you are in Afghanistan or in Baghdad, maybe your state is different. So things, I'm sure you understand Benghazi very well, do you?
Of course.
Yes, and you understand Libyan family life is very well. I don't want to be so long to give a chance to most of the people to answer the question, to have a question.
So your question is?
My question is asking the method of the questionnaires, which has led you to say Libya revolution, it's not a spring. It's a spring being, they kneel Gaddafi down, the dictator who lived 42 years. This is enough. And that's the most wonderful spring we have in the world. I think Gaddafi, he touched the whole world. He actually ended the enemy of the whole world. If he'd been down, that's spring, isn't it?
And that's very interesting because based on our previous presentation, but I'll let you answer.
Thank you for your question, Sir Bafertia. First of all, the question was not on Facebook. We set it up on Quatrix. It's a tool for making survey. And we send some of them on, by emails, but the majority we just go to public pages, popular pages, we put it there. In the consent, only Libyan who can answer. We had also more detailed, so this is only a very quick statistical analysis. We have a more qualitative part, because for each question there is an inbox. So which city you are from Misrata, from Benghazi, from. So also we have the IP address, which shows where they are, in Alexandria, in Tunisia. So this quadrant shows even the location of the people. And actually, Dr. Richard Lang, the one who was responsible for the methodology part, he told me this would give us more about the situation of the country, and because of the instability of the country, people fled outside.
Okay. We have another question. I want to get the questions in before we adjourn.
Yeah, I don't know if this is on those same lines of your question, but I guess I would be curious if there was a question about the timeline of when sentiments changed. Because I imagine with the fall of Gaddafi, it was a very exuberant, exciting moment, but now it's being looked as a fall, or like the shedding of leaves. Was there any type of study as far as how fast that sentiment changed, or?
Yeah, actually there is no research studies triggering Libya in particular. Maybe this is one of the first. Generally, as I stated, most of the research studies they looked at social media as an innovation and whether East democracy could be established or not, and how young us to use that. But to go for deeper analysis about the Libyan situation, still not. But for me, myself, Libyan, I want to go back to his question,
So
because
before you answer his question, I just want to make one point so that I'll understand. Of course, you pulled your sample from people who use Facebook, but then you use another tool to actually use for the questionnaire.
Yeah, we set
So
up.
your questionnaire was only sent to people who use Facebook? You didn't
Exactly.
have a control group, maybe people who do not use Facebook? Because usually in political science, what we try to do is have an experimental group and a control group. And that way you can gauge and answer those kinds of questions that are being raised by this gentleman.
Yeah, I mean, it's Libyan is 70% of their population without of electricity, and it's out of internet, and it's those people, the only people who are sitting abroad, in Europe or America, those the one who are sitting comfortably answering your question.
Yeah,
So let me hear respond and close
Yeah,
out
I
the question.
respect, yes, but it could be, we just have one group for more qualitative and quantitative studies, but Yeah, we'll take your recommendation into consideration.
But it's a spring.
I can get that.
It is not a spring.
I personally
So-
believe.
Thank you guys for the question.
It has never been a spring. Actually, as the lady already said, yes, at the beginning our expectation was very high. We were really hoping that we will see Libya that we dream, that finally we can elect the president that we want, the president that can come with a proposal that meets most of the Libyan dreams. But unfortunately,
Wait.
this didn't happen.
Wait, my dear.
Any other questions?
The other things, we
Let's do-
wanted social justice. Social justice.
France,
is
they stayed 40
completely
years in
absent.
France. Spain, they stayed
Excuse me.
30
And Libya.
years.
Excuse me, one moment, sir.
American, 50 years.
That's another question.
You're
In
saying-
You
your
don't convince him.
You conclude your presentation with the statement that what was supposed to be an Arab Spring is in fact an Arab Fall, a disappointment, and that whatever you meant to become a democracy was somehow hijacked by Anglo-American forces united with the Islamists to establish their dependent state. What have you asked any questions in your questionnaire that could point to such a conclusion, or is it just your conclusion?
Yeah, actually, when they reflected, so the answer to this question more qualitative. When the participants were asked if they achieved their goals, the majority said no, we were able to, but the Islamists stole it. The majority.
My question is precisely if there was any indication of
In the research,
of Anglo-American involvement in this whole process, because this is your
no, to
conclusion.
be honest, in the responses, no. But this is why I set it under disclaimer. So this is what the majority think. If you go to the people, they think that they are another agenda. Actually, the agenda was not that bad. What happened is that the NARD Corporation and the Freedom House and the Academic Exchange, which implemented in London in 2007, they thought that maybe the idea of including these extremists, not excluding them, not to fight them, not to use force against them, this what would make them like a normal or moderate Islamists.
Do you have any proofs
bit-
for that?
Yeah, there are 3 studies actually, I refer to them. Sorry. The RAND Corporation made a study, the International Crisis, and the House of Freedom. They all think that including the extremists or the Islamists, maybe this will kind of, make them a kind of moderate, Muslims.
Okay, well,
And the
I
academic
think to
change
answer the
was.
question, I think it might be helpful that if you're interested in these studies, you could provide Abir your email address and she could send you a link to them, I think.
Good.
I think that way it would be better because this is just,
I think it would be
business
helpful
study.
to give the source in a precise way, namely the title, the author, the date of publication,
Okay.
because this is just
We only have a
like,
few minutes, but I have a couple
I
of
will
questions.
try. I will try to find them. If I find them, of course, for whoever, like,
After
just give me your
the
email.
we adjourn, you can work that out.
Yeah,
But
and
we
this
do have
is
a couple
why
of
I wrote
questions here.
disclaimer.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
What percentage of the Libyan population has access to Facebook?
Actually, the House of Freedom, showed that there are more than 1.9 million Libyan Facebook account after 2011, after the
That's
revolution.
interesting. And then
Put
next
into
question.
consideration that the total population is 6 million. So this indicates a tremendous increase in the use of social media, and more precisely Facebook, within just 2 years.
Okay, thank you. And there's one more question, and that's the
Yeah.
last question.
Oh, not if I've seen debates about this issue. People argue if they include the Islamists, would it eventually become a democracy by voting them out, or do these regimes have to have like a dictatorship in order to be secular? Like, how not by dictatorship I mean not allowing the Islamists, like has happened in Turkey in the past and Egypt. What is your opinion?
Yeah, I will tell you something. These uprisings are irreversible. We will never be where we were. We will never. So whether about Tunisia, Libya, or Egypt. Our hope for, you can consider me a kind of liberal. I'm against the idea of exclusion. Whether you are Islamist, whether you are secular, whether you are moderate, whether you are communist, we should be all together to build this country. Look at America, for example. Why we cannot reach these people? Why we cannot take it as a model? At Europe, I'm walking with a bride in the street. No one could show any kind of discrimination. Very rarely when you hear someone discriminated because of the color.
Your time has run out.
Yeah.
I'm going to close the session, but I do want to make a quick point. About a few presentations, we were supposed to have 4. 2 could not make it, but I think we profited by their absence. We had 2 good presentations and good discussion. And I think on one hand, we see that a history of structure of civil society developed by the people internally, what they call civil society, their notion, not somebody else's notion, versus a situation where you had a dictator for 40 years, and when 42 years. Thank you for correcting me. I know you would be the one. Thank you. But at any rate, but at any rate, when Gaddafi left and the dictatorship fell, there was no structure. It was a vacuum of sorts, and that people have to come together and determine what they feel is the best civil society for them, and have what's inclusive and what are the opportunities. So it's really no pat answer to your question. It really depends on the history. And with that, I'm going to close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.